So you talk about in the politics of the family. Is that correct, Dr.
Yes.
Carlson? Now, would you just tell me a little bit more about that? What in particular do you focus on when you write or speak about the politics of the family?
I did my doctoral dissertation on the origins of family policy in Sweden in the 1920s and 1930s, and studying the work of a couple of socialists, social democrats, by the name of Alva Myrdal and her husband Gunnar Myrdal. I learned a lot from that study. One thing I learned from them, which is entirely correct, is that why do we need a family politics? Why is that important? Well, putting it in a nutshell, family life, as we know it, traditional family life, I like to call it natural family life, is at home in a pre-industrial setting. It's at home on a family farm. It's at home in a workman's cottage or a workman's shop where the family lives on the second floor and the shop is on the first floor where the craftsman works. That was the normal human experience in every society, for every generation until about 200 years ago. The Industrial Revolution, the rise of industry, has put real pressure on families. Mm-hmm. First of all, it separates the place from where you work from where you sleep and live. That's a radically new thing in human life. There always were a few people that did that, but for the great majority to live and work in separate places, that's something radically new. The labor market in an industrial society doesn't care about paternal roles. It doesn't really care about children. Right. Children are an encumbrance. Marriage is an encumbrance because the wife maybe the market says she should be working in this city, and her husband or potential husband should be working in that city, and so marriage gets in the way of rational allocation of labor. Moreover, industrial society destroys, in fact, aims at completely eliminating the home economy, where people do take care of themselves. What do I mean by that? Well, it used to be that everybody made their own cloth and sewed their own clothing, made their own candles. Okay, all that's been industrialized. But even today, we're industrializing what was still left the home, which was childcare, early childcare, the care of the elderly. All of these things are also being industrialized. That is, turned over to professionals. You pay money to have others do it for you. Yeah. Even infant feeding has been industrialized. It used to be infants breastfed. Now the marketplace pushes infant formula. All of these are ways in which industrial society, both capitalist and socialist, aims at eliminating the family and the family economy. So you have to find a way to counter that. Ideally, the benefits of a market society, and there are many, and they're huge and they're important, but you have to find a ways to blunt that anti-family bias within industrial society, within capitalism, if you'll have it. And it's finding a balance, a good balance, which protects marriage, protects the home economy, protects, and in fact still finds a way to encourage childbirth again, finds a way to encourage natural marriage again. That's the trick of family policy. So I think you have to do that. Otherwise, marriages will disappear. Children will disappear. And in fact, we're seeing that happen in our own society today.
Right. And in many Western societies.
In almost all of them, yeah.
Now, Hungary is working to try to accomplish some of the things that you're talking about.
Very much so.
And how has that worked out? And what specific policy measures have they taken that have been successful?
Well, they're doing a number of things. In fact, they're doing it on an unprecedented scale. Tax relief, massive tax relief for families raising children. Most recently, they just introduced a proposal, not a proposal, it's law. Any woman who bears 4 children will be exempted from income tax for life.
So the whole family will be, or just
the family? Yeah, the family will be exempted from income tax for life. They have massive subsidies for new homes. They have for family homes. They are providing, again, they provide very generous child care, but they also provide an allowance for a stay-at-home parent. Mm-hmm. They find a way to balance those two. They have generous allowances paid at time of a birth, bearing a child. All the costs associated with that are now being supported by the government through allowances and so on. You add it all together, it's a massive program. They are investing 4% of their gross domestic product into support for marriage and support for having children and raising them. How much money is that? Well, in the U.S. terms, if we did the same thing here, it would be annually an expenditure of $800 billion in support of families and in support of marriage. So it's a massive, massive thing. Have they turned things around? They have. They had a very low birth rate. It's rising. It's going to take a while to see what the effect is on completed fertility, but it's going up. At least it's heading in the right direction. And marital fertility is up about 20 to 25% over the low point they reached before starting these policies. What they want to do is get back from about an average of 1.3 children born per woman, at least get it back up to 2.1, the replacement level. That's their clear goal. And they say that is our primary purpose of this government in Hungary, of the Fidesz government, it's the Fidesz party, is to restore the family and restore natural fertility.
Has this been around long enough to see if it's made any noticeable impact on like the divorce rate or the rate of abortion or such things within the country?
Well, the abortion rate is down. There may be other reasons for that as well. In terms of divorce, I haven't seen numbers on that yet. I just haven't seen numbers on that. Something similar is going on in Poland. The principal introduction they have there is called 500 plus. It's an allowance paid to all families with a second and subsequent children. Again, there's no income test. It's 500 zlotys, which is about $130 to $140 per month, which is it's paid out right direct. It's been extremely popular. Mm-hmm. It's only been in operation about 3 years now. 2016 is when it came into effect. And it's very popular, and it seems to be starting to work. The other thing they're doing in Poland, one of the problems Poland has had since entering the European Union is their young people have been leaving. Mm-hmm. With the free labor market, they've been going to England and Germany to find jobs. To try to keep them there, to try to encourage them to create families. The new proposal there is a policy will eliminate income taxes on anybody under the age of 26.
I like that.
I think it's a great plan. Another thing you've seen in Hungary has been a plan to deal with student loan debt, which their problem is not as big as ours, but here's a model for us. Student loans will be forgiven as you give birth to children. And if you have at least 3 children, your student loan debt will all be paid off. I think we should do this. I actually proposed this about 12, 13 years ago here in the United States, that we should do the same thing here. The government created a system that's anti-marriage and anti-baby. That's what we call student loans. That's one of its effects. The government should deal with it by forgiving the debt. If you have children, I would like to see it within responsible marriages, if that's at all possible legally.
Well, this is all really fascinating. Here's a question for you. And I don't know if it even has an answer, but what I'd love to hear from you, tell us about a policy that has a negative impact on families that people might not expect in the American system.
Well, student loans, I just went through that. It was supposed to be a help, but it's proven to be quite awful. Well, I'll give you another example. We had a very successful policy in the United States starting, actually in the 1930s. I, for one, have argued, much to the consternation of many conservative friends, that the New Deal, its domestic policy platform, was very pro-family.
You're talking about the Roosevelt New Deal, not the Green New Deal?
No, talking about the Roosevelt New Deal of the 1930s and early 40s. And again, this was when the Democratic Party was a pro-family party. And everything they did in terms of social policy and even of economic policy was designed around a model of a breadwinning father, a mother at home, and at least 3 children. that was their assumption of what a normal American family was. That's what they thought they were protecting and encouraging and defending. And in many ways they did. One of the policies they introduced through the Housing Act of 1934 was a policy to provide subsidized loans for couples buying a first home. It was expanded greatly during World War II and after with the Veterans Administration Program, which gave interest-free loans to veterans and their wives. It was a huge explosion in housing, but it put families in housing. I mean, we had between 1945 and 1960, the number of home-owning Americans almost doubled. Number of people who owned their homes or had equity in homes, probably is a better way to put it. Sometimes the mortgages weren't paid off yet. It was a huge change. And almost all of that subsidy went to pay for or support new young families just starting out, buying their first home. Well, in the late 60s, early 70s, there were complaints from others. This is sort of when the assumption that the family should be supported and encouraged was breaking down. Feminists were attacking that idea. Population control people said we don't want to encourage the birth of children. Anyway, housing policy shifted. And they ended the practice of limiting subsidy, so to speak, through the housing programs of the federal government, just to young couples buying a first home. They extended it far more broadly. In fact, to the point where actually there were some studies done by the 1980s. Federal policy was starting to encourage divorce. How was that? Because they were subsidizing mortgages for single people coming out of broken marriages. Why? Well, because they had to be fair, right? Okay, well, that was the argument. It had to be equal. But you had to support, you were supporting, in a way, the breakup of homes by providing a subsidy to create the second home. And in fact, the economic system benefited from that too. This is where I talk part of the cultural contradiction of capitalism. A divorce in the short run is a great thing for the economy. It creates two homes where one home had been sufficient. You're going to have 2 refrigerators now rather than 1, 2 stoves. Everything has to double. The family that the strong family that still has a garden, there's a lot of home cooked meals and things like that, is not doing much to support the economy. But the divorced family, which suddenly is eating out all the time, which is buying childcare, all these things are suddenly now monetized, and looks like the economy is going up, but in fact, it's not. So what we see is that housing policy shifted from supporting and encouraging the formation of families to actually subsidizing their breakup.